We are back. We are back. Welcome to the show. Hit that like button from you guys. Like, share, and subscribe. Do all the things. Need you guys to do all the things for me, please. All of the things. We're going to get into this conversation tonight. Donald Trump has finally taken his constitutional grievance all the way up to the Supreme Court. We're battling over birthright citizenship right now. He actually attended briefly. He attended the oral arguments that began today. And I don't think he was all that happy with what he witnessed today. And honestly, don't trust the media, but right now, a lot of the media, a lot of the talking heads are telling me that it looks like the Supreme Court is leaning away from Donald Trump and arguing in favor of, or at least it looks like they're leaning in favor of keeping birthright citizenship as it is and not restricting it to like foundational Americans is a word I keep hearing people throw around. But we're going to talk about this stuff a little bit. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all for coming out. I appreciate you guys' patronage. Let's get into the show.
On the tariffs, the president really wanted to go. Apparently there's like a designated seat for him at the Supreme Court. But if he shows up there tomorrow, what do you think, Ellie, that's going to be like if he's sitting there? 3 of the justices he appointed, several of those that he criticized heavily and said their families should be embarrassed of them after the tariff decision. I mean, what is that going to change the environment to be like?
Well, if Donald Trump wants to go attend oral argument at the Supreme Court, he has every right to do so. Godspeed. He's a member of the public. He's a party to this case. But let me tell you, he's not going to like what he sees playing out because his administration lawyers are making arguments that are vast stretches of law. Arrayed against his legal position is the plain text of the Constitution, the 14th Amendment on birthright citizenship, 157 years of traditions and norms and congressional action, and the decisions of every lower court federal judge to hear this exact case. 4 federal district court judges, 3 federal circuits have all ruled against the Trump administration. So if he does, in fact, choose to attend, Caitlin, it will indeed be unprecedented. I think it's going to be hard to ignore the fact that he's in the room. I do not think it will have any influence on the judges. And I think when he leaves that courthouse tomorrow, if he does go, he's going to be in a bad mood.
Well, we'll see what his mood is going to be. Who knows? Maybe he'll enjoy it. Shermichael, I should note the Solicitor General, John Sauer, was also Trump's personal attorney before all of this happened. So it's not like he's unfamiliar with what the president is like. And what I was thinking about when the president announced today that he was going is I was in the courtroom when the president was there on his case on the hush money payment. And he kept the whole time was hitting his attorneys, passing notes to them, sticky notes. I mean, he had a lot of input on their cross-examination, what was happening.
You know what? We're going to call an audible. Roland Martin is live right now talking about Trump. And he's got crazy black wizard, Ellie Miscal, live on his channel right now. We're going to jump over to Roland Martin and the crazy black wizard guy.
Ellie Miscal, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Oh, Jeff,
thank you so much, Roland. Have a nice one.
All right, folks. One of the critical issues that we're looking at is the issue of voting. It is dominant before us. We see what Donald Trump tried to do with that silly executive order on yesterday.
Literally 130 years of Supreme Court is going to get telling you, get out my face with this, right? Like he that is him dismissing Sauer's argument on that point. On the second clip you played, or near the end, the last clip you played was Amy Coney Barrett. Now, I like to remind people here, gently so, that we also have to remember that Amy Coney Barrett has adopted children, and that coming to the mother of adopted children with an argument that says your citizenship is tied to the blood of your birth parents, not the soil that you're born onto or any other kind of legal distinction, that ain't going to hit too well with a person like Amy Coney Barrett. And I found her to be very strong today, criticizing the administration, kind of going after their core underlying argument. The clip that you played, she was throwing around a lot of Latin phrases, jus sanguinis versus jus soli. These are Latin phrases that go to the idea of how citizenship is based. Is it jus sanguinis means through the blood. So your citizenship comes from the blood of your parents and is passed on to you. Jus soli means from.
We're literally debating blood and soil nationalism in the Supreme Court. At the very least, thank you, Trump, for putting that issue up there in front of the court. Who knows how far it'll get you? But I like that we're actually talking about blood and soil nationalism.
The soil, does the citizenship come from the soil, the land that you're birthed on, right? In America, we've done it jus soli. We've done it based on the land you're birthed on. We've done that not just since the 14th Amendment. We've done that before the 14th Amendment when you looked at how citizenship was determined in each of the various states. And it's not just America. It is pretty much the entire new world. So Republicans, MAGA people, they like to say, oh, no, America's so very different. It's not how they do it in the old world. No, that's not how they do it in some European countries. But I think your listeners and viewers are particularly primed to understand that Europe ain't the whole damn world.
America is not an extension of the new world. America is an extension of the old world. It's an extension of Europe, of Britain, and to be exact, and ancient Roman legal and Greek philosophy. Like, it's not a new world philosophy to be democracy, American Republic and all that. It's not a new world philosophy. So the idea that we should be bound to this quote new world just because that's how they do it, it's not really going to work for us. This is why we have traditions and a constitution.
And when you look at the hemisphere that America is in, what you see in the Western hemisphere is that most of the countries here, the US, Canada, Mexico, Argentina, Brazil, I can go on and on and on, they do it jus soli. They do it based on the soil that you're born into, right? And Amy Coney Barrett was hitting exactly at that point that this is the way that we do it. And Sauer is giving them, and Trump is giving them no arguments and no reasons for them to completely throw out the Constitution, completely throw out the 14th Amendment, completely throw out literally 130 years of Supreme Court precedent, just because Donald Trump is particularly bigoted and particularly hates undocumented immigrants. Like that core argument wasn't making sense to.
And everybody who I listen to give any analysis of that, they always throw that cheap shot in there. The only reason Donald Trump is doing this is because he hates non-white people. He hates all the POCs. He hates the black people too. And I'm like, really, this would actually help Black Americans a lot, especially like the FBA crowd and all that, the foundational Black Americans. This would go a long way to, bolstering their argument.
Barrett, to Roberts, and even a bit as you played to Neil Gorsuch, right? Now, you heard them in the Gorsuch clip talking a lot about this issue of domicile, right? This idea that to confer citizenship to your children, you have to be domiciled in the United States, right? Well, that is a term that John Sauer and the Trump administration, they're just making up. You can read the 14th Amendment, as I have. You can read the Civil Rights Act, as I have. And the word domiciled ain't there. What the amendment says is subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. And you played the clip of Kagan explaining very accurately that subject to the jurisdiction. Usually,
they argued a lot about that word domiciled. It's very much a part of the legal arguing of the bill. I'm not sure if it's totally in the bill word for word as it was written originally, but it's very much a part of the legal theoretics that went into the bill. And so they had no problem arguing this very term domicile in the Supreme Court directly today, which if he was being honest at all, he wouldn't even make this argument like the word domicile has no place here. It's literally something that they all took great interest in today.
usually means subject to the authority of, right? So if I can be arrested by the United States, I am subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, right? If I can get a parking ticket from the United States, I am subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. We know that's not true for everybody that's here. Ambassadors in New York City, ambassadors, I know, don't get parking tickets. And it's really
subject to the jurisdiction of and being an actual citizen of are two completely separate parallel issues. And that's what's being debated here. Anybody who winds up into anybody's territory, you're now subject to the jurisdiction of whoever is in charge of that territory. That's how territory works, right? But it doesn't make you a citizen, though. And this is kind of like what they're trying to they're trying to get a fast one by you when they argue it like this in the Supreme Court, especially. Oh, well, if you're subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, that means you must be a citizen. This is kind of why Ketanji Brown Jackson is getting roasted today. I'm going to play the clip in a minute, but she basically makes an argument that, well, if you went to Japan and had to follow Japanese laws, wouldn't that make you like subject to the jurisdiction of Japan, therefore Japanese? Like, no, it's not how that works. Never.
really annoying. Ambassadors can argue that they're not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. My black ass is, and so is any immigrant. So is any undocumented immigrant, they are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. So this idea of like, oh, actually it depends on domiciliaries, that's some bullcrap that Sauer is making up. Now, he's not alone in making it up, because Sauer's fundamental argument.
And the reason why the word domicile is important here is because they are looking for the original grounding in citizenship, meaning if you have established legal domicile in this country, then you can be granted citizenship, and then your children, so on, could be granted citizenship, right? But if you haven't had legal domicile established, if it was illegal, then your citizenship is no longer valid, nor is your children's, and so on and so forth, right? It will be retroactively like putting a lot of people in question because you aren't an actual legally recognized, you haven't domiciled here legally. You haven't really crossed that legal threshold. And so they argued about that for a long time this morning.
Is based on the arguments of a man named, a 19th century man named Alfred P. Morse. That's the source that Sauer and the Trump administration keep going back to to try to make their "it's about domicile, it's not for transients" argument. The thing about Arthur P. Morse, he was an avowed white supremacist. And when I say avowed, I mean Arthur P. Morse is actually the lawyer that argued Plessy v. Ferguson for the side of the segregationists, right? So we're talking about like a famous white supremacist, right? There's like Nathan Bedford Forrest, John C. Calhoun, and like this guy, right? Like he's on that third tier of like famous white supremacists in history. And that's the guy that the Trump administration's entire legal argument is based on. And at the Supreme Court today, both Roberts called Sauer's sources quirky, which I believe is, I speak white for a living. I believe that's the white version of that sounds like some racist bullcrap to me, right?
He speaks white for a living. That's hilarious. I wonder if they're hiring. I can do that job. I can speak white. I should get paid to do that.
Robert's calling it quirky. Kagan called his sources unusual. He's using a white supremacist to make his argument, right? So yeah, I think Trump lost, and I think it's not going to be particularly close. I counted 6 votes against the Trump position, if you count all the liberals, Kagan, Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, along with Roberts, along with Amy Coney Barrett, and probably along with Gorsuch. I could argue that there's 7 votes. I could argue that Brett Kavanaugh was a little bit harder to pin down, but a lot of people are arguing that Brett Kavanaugh also wasn't buying it. And Roland, if you want me to go really crazy, want me to say something really radical, I think Clarence Thomas is still in play. I'm not saying we're going to get him. But Clarence Thomas, usually when he's against you, he makes it very clear in his like 1 or 2 questions that he's going to ask. And this hearing, he asked 3 questions, which is a lot for Clarence. And only one of them was obviously like, I'm with Trump, right? The other 2 were open-ended a little bit. You could kind of take them either way. So I don't necessarily, look, I'm not going to predict that Thomas is going to vote against the Trump administration. I'm not a fool. But even Thomas wasn't 100% bought in to this particular Trump argument.
And it was awesome that Donald Trump had to watch this ass kicking live in person.
So let's remember, there has never been a sitting president to attend Supreme Court oral arguments. That has never happened in recorded history because it is gauche.
It's actually very it's a very new thing. Trump is like breaking records left and right. We've never had this before. Apparently it's important to Trump, which, you know, I'm glad that he at least showed face. You know, it's almost like when imagine if we had a king. You know, it's like when the king presides over the meeting or whatever, brings a little bit more weight to it.
Classless. It is a violation of it's not a violation of separation of powers, but it's implication of separation of powers. You're not supposed to do it. Now, we know that Trump doesn't care about what he's supposed to do or what he's not supposed to do. That we understand. But you got to ask, why did he show up at all? And Roland, I've made the analogy. I think what Trump was trying to do was to intimidate his handpicked justices by simply being in the courtroom, right?
Do you think this is like the mafia? It's like when De Niro played Al Capone in The Untouchables. You think he's like Al Capone? He's gonna show up with a baseball bat. You're gonna sit in the front row with his goons. Make sure you best do the right thing. You vote like I tell you to vote. You think that's how it's gonna work?
Tony Soprano kind of move. It is literally the move Michael Corleone pulls in The Godfather 3, right? Where the guy is testifying at the Senate hearing, and then Michael shows up with the guy's brother. Michael doesn't say anything, just looks at his brother, and suddenly Frankie Pentageli is like, oh, I just made it all up about Mikey Corleone. Right? Like, that's I think what Trump was trying to do, was trying to sit there and intimidate the justices just by his presence, and it didn't work. They didn't care.
We'll see how that goes. We'll see. I think the arguments are pretty much done for now, but they're gonna have to come back and give some more testimony. I mean, to give their verdict, rather. They're gonna have to come back and give their final verdict, but it did not look good, honestly. By all accounts, it was not the greatest day for Trump in the courtroom. And a lot of the liberals are really happy about this. A lot of the liberals are basically celebrating this. They want to keep the door open, and they want to legalize all of their illegal voters right now.
Legal permanent resident. For Norman Wong, the Supreme Court on Wednesday is set to hear arguments over U.S. President Donald Trump's executive order denying automatic citizenship to U.S.-born babies if neither parent is a citizen or legal permanent resident. For Norman Wong, this legal battle echoes a constitutional dispute that was settled more than a century ago.
No more anchor babies. And this is another thing, that whether or not the actual wording of the Constitution agrees with this is a problem nonetheless. The idea that people who actually have foreign allegiances come to America for the only purpose of having an American baby, so now that their foreign allegiance can have an American foothold, it opens the door for all kind of espionage and international problems, and we have to fix that. We have to do something about that.
Amid a wave of anti-Chinese sentiment in the late 1800s, the U.S. government tried to prevent Wong's Chinese-American great-grandfather, Wong Kim Ark, from re-entering the country after visiting his parents in China. They argued that despite him being born in the U.S., he was not a citizen.
He came back in 1895. He was stopped from entering the United States and forced to remain on the boat. The collector of customs decided that the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act was enforced, and he didn't recognize Wong Kim Ark's birthright citizenship.
In March 1898, the Supreme Court rejected the government's claim and ruled that the Constitution's 14th Amendment guarantees citizenship to nearly everyone born on U.S. soil, including children of foreign nationals like Wong. That decision has stood for 128 years, but its understanding will once again be contested on Wednesday.
Probably around 25 years ago that I first learned about Wong Kim Ark. But at that time, I didn't appreciate what he accomplished. And I didn't really appreciate the fact that he won a victory for birthright citizenship. Now, we want to do it by executive order and chip away at what these things mean or rights. That means with executive orders, if you could do away with a right through the constitutional amendment system, then those actually don't matter anymore.
For much of his life, Wong says he barely thought about citizenship until history began repeating itself. For him, this challenge feels personal and unsettling.
My citizenship I took for granted since I was a child. I was born here, and it was only obvious that I was an American, and that's how I saw myself. 25 years ago, I didn't think any question of birthright citizenship would ever affect me.
Trump contends that for generations, the U.S. has given citizenship to people who don't qualify, those who were in the U.S. illegally or temporarily. If the Supreme Court endorses that view, that could affect the legal status of as many as 250,000 babies born each year.
I hope the court will stand by what the court had done 128 years ago. This citizenship, birthright citizenship, speaks to the American identity. Most Americans in this country owe their citizenship to birthright citizenship. The ones that don't are the indigenous people.
The problem with issues of national identity is that if you don't maintain some level of status quo, then you do begin to just eradicate whatever your national identity is really made of. And that is a very racialized notion that you can't really get around that, but that's just a simple fact. No one would ever mistake an Indian for a Japanese, right? Because their nation, their national identity is so racially and ethnically homogenous that Japan is effectively one thing internally and externally, right? Japan is the Japanese. And they may have some, I know they have some, I forget what you call them. Like they have some other tribes up there, but by and large, Japan is an ethnically homogenous group. And they have a deep sense of national identity because of that, right? Now, America is a much less ethnically homogenous group, but by and large, America was founded by European settlers. And over time, we had a slave population that became just regular citizens. And that was the whole reason, as I was told when I was back in school long time ago. They told me the 14th Amendment was written to keep the slaves so they can give the slaves legal coverage as American citizens. Now I'm here finding out it's actually so that you can have a baby in America and then you're an American now, like magic.
But here, if we could just step back, I think that everybody's absolutely correct. What the president is doing is trying to appeal to a very specific part of his base. But to be very clear, what has happened inside the current Republican Party apparatus is that things that used to be relegated to the fringe, this idea that America is quote unquote uniquely for Americans, which translates to America is for foundational Americans, white people in this country, right? That is white supremacist ideology. And what has happened—
Foundational Black Americans would like to talk to you about that. This idea that only white people are foundational to America is just a literal historical falsehood. There were Black citizens of this country on day one. before the slaves even got off the plantation, because not every black person in America was enslaved. So there was a bunch of black people here, literally foundational to the country. Day zero niggas. They were here before day one.
And under this, not just under this second presidency of Donald Trump, but I would argue since he came to rise in political power, which predates him coming down that escalator, which starts with him questioning the citizenship of the first black president of the United States of America, Barack Obama. It's this white supremacist ideology, frankly, is foundational to Donald Trump's political beliefs, if we can argue that he holds any to be true. The thing that has been consistent is this idea that some people in this country are, in fact, not foundational Americans, that some people in this country, their citizenship deserves to be questioned. And so,
but that is just a basic reality. Barack Obama, by definition, is not a foundational black American. He has foundational blood on his mama's side. That's a whole other deal. But he's not a foundational black American. His black blood goes to Africa. It doesn't go to Virginia. Doesn't go to North Carolina. Doesn't go down into Mississippi. It doesn't go to the Panhandle. His black blood goes to the motherland, right? And this is what foundational American actually plays into. There is an idea that your blood carries on for generations on the same land that it was born into. And so his black half wasn't born here. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. His white half is good. His white half is in check, but his black half is not from here.
So this idea that this is just about immigrants in this country, people who have, maybe have come to this country seeking asylum, who have crossed the border illegally, who are undocumented, that is not what this is just about. In the last election, the last presidential election, there were people on the right, not so much on the fringe, who questioned initially if Kamala Harris was actually eligible to serve. I would argue that goes all the way back to 2020 when she was picked as Joe Biden's vice president. I know, because I was in the room saying we need to make sure that we underscore she was born in Oakland, California, at this particular hospital, because there are people out there who are attempting to assert that she is ineligible because she is not a true American.
She's another one. She's like questionable blackness, right? And Kamala got by. We didn't even question her American citizenship. It wasn't even like that with Kamala. But you try to pass her off as a Keisha girl. You try to pass her off as a black girl who graduated from Howard University. And we had to start questioning her blackness. You made us question her blackness, all right? Because before Kamala actually ran, I remember when Kamala became black the day she announced she was running for president. Because up until that day, she had been known as like the first Indian American senator. She went into the Senate praising her Indian American heritage. She never once raised the black flag until she decided she needed to be president. And then all of a sudden, there's a black girl running for president. And then she was able to like ride on the coattails of being black privilege or something like that. However that works, I don't know.
So this is a very slippery slope, I would argue. And if people think this is just about folks who might have crossed the border or who might have crossed the border illegally or overstayed their visa, it is not.
I mean, Mr. Attorney General, I must say, you read the 14th Amendment, it could not be more clear. Like the Supreme Court threw out this racist argument in 1898. 1898. I will tell you truthfully, the reason I am actually excited about this is because I want to know if Clarence Thomas and Alito both decide they're going to have the guts to side with Donald Trump in abolishing the 14th Amendment, because the clear language of the 14th Amendment states what birthright citizenship is. All persons born or naturalized in the United States are citizens of the United States. And Donald Trump is trying to get that overturned
Good morning, General. So I guess I am looking at your position in this case, and it boils down to requiring us to do at least these two things. One is believe that the framers were not importing the common law rule and understanding of birthright citizenship. And the second is to believe that what they were doing was departing from that common law rule in the way that you suggest. That is, they were seeking to have this turn on domicile. I think you have a number of hurdles to accomplish those two things. One of which I think is that when we look at this court's case law, and no one I think has mentioned Schooner's Exchange, but it appears that that was an 1812 case in which it seems as though the court had already accepted at the time of the ratification of the 14th Amendment that the allegiance that you were talking about was the English common law rule. That, in other words, allegiance meant that you are covered by the laws of the jurisdiction, that you can rely on that jurisdiction's protection. That's what allegiance meant. Now you're saying today, no, allegiance meant something about loyalty or that kind of idea. But if the Supreme Court...
Am I the only one who thinks that she doesn't understand how allegiance works? Let me run that back a little bit. Where did we lose the practical application of the word allegiance? How did we lose that?
One of which I think is that when we look at this court's case law, and no one I think has mentioned Schooner's Exchange, but it appears that that was an 1812 case in which it seems as though the court had already accepted at the time of the ratification of the 14th Amendment that the allegiance that you were talking about was the English common law rule. That, in other words, allegiance meant that you are covered by the laws of the jurisdiction, that you can rely on that jurisdiction's protection. That's what allegiance meant. Now you're saying today, no, allegiance meant something about loyalty or that kind of idea. But if the Supreme Court had, prior to the 14th Amendment, established that allegiance meant the common law definition, I think your first hurdle is to help us understand why we would believe that when the 14th Amendment was ratified, the framers weren't just incorporating what we had previously said it meant.
Page 572 of the congressional record directly addresses this. They say the concept of temporary and local allegiance from the Schooner Exchange is what is meant by, or temporary and local jurisdiction from the Schooner Exchange is what is meant by the word jurisdiction in the 14th Amendment. Senator Trumbull says, I thought about saying owing allegiance, but again, quote, there's a sort of allegiance from persons temporarily resident in the United States whom we have no right to make citizens. So he expressly and consciously rejected reliance on Schooner.
What do we do with, I mean, that's a debate and it's a discussion, very valid, but then we have a subsequent debate between Fessenden and Wade where the same concept comes up and it becomes clear, at least from Senator Wade's perspective, that that's wrong. So Fessenden, and I'm not sure whether these are senators, I apologize. Fessenden says, suppose a person is born here of parents from abroad temporarily in this country. Wade responds, the senator says a person may be born here and not be a citizen. I know that is so in one instance, in the case of the children of foreign ministers who reside near the United States, et cetera, et cetera. So it appears as though in that exchange, at least Senator Wade believed that the English common law understanding of what it means to have allegiance, to be a temporary person on the soil, was what was being adopted.
Yeah, that concept or that exchange strongly supports us. If you look at it in context, Senator Wade has introduced a version that says only birth on U.S. soil and doesn't have any allegiance or jurisdictional element to it. And so Senator Fessenden stands up and says, well, that can't be right because, you know, obviously, what about the children of temporary visitors? It has this, you know, it's another one of these statements that has this appeal to a background understanding that we all agree that the temporary visitors, their children do not become citizens. And then Senator Wade has to kind of backtrack and say, well, what are the children of ambassadors? And in the end, Congress does not adopt Senator Wade's proposal. So we think,
you know, most of the time when you listen to Ketanji Brown Jackson actually in practice doing her job, she always goes viral for sounding dumb. It's like she never comes off as intelligent with a complete grasp of the jurisprudence, and she's like a legally adept mind. She never gets any praise for that. It's always like, damn, I can't believe how dumb she is.
I think that to the extent you can draw an inference from that, the inference strongly supports.
All right, well, let me just ask you about why we would.
And yeah, shout out to True Hype with the 5 ball. I'm gonna bring that up for you. He says, have you seen a story about the Chinese man with 100 surrogates born in the US but raised shortly after in China to come back as young adults? Yeah, he's got a dynasty. He built an early 2000s Rockefeller dynasty with American-born Chinese babies. We're gonna pull that up. Shout out to True Hype with the 5 ball. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Like, share, and subscribe, y'all. Do all the things, y'all. Help us get this channel growing.
Give me the money. Give me the money for all that I would do. Give me the money.
We're going to start talking about these Chinese anchor babies. You thought the Mexican anchor babies was the problem. No. Mexican anchor babies don't even know how to do kung fu. These Chinese anchor babies are going to be a problem.
See in the 14th Amendment anything about parental allegiance. Several of my colleagues have talked about the fact that your view of this turns on what the status of the parents are, and not the child, as would the born in the United States view of it. How can you help us understand why we wouldn't expect to see a mention of parents in the text of this amendment?
I think it was well understood that, for example, children cannot, newborns cannot form domicile. So it followed every 19th century.
That assumes domicile is in the test. And I'm asking you, how do we know that Congress did adopt the test that you say it adopted?
Yeah, when you're looking at 19th century conceptions of allegiance, the notion that the allegiance, again, you say domicile is instantiating the concept of allegiance for aliens as opposed to citizen. All of that, the 19th century understands the newborns domicile, its allegiance follows the allegiance of the parents. And I point out that their theory relies on parental allegiance as well, because they recognize the exceptions for, hostile invading armies, for tribal Indians, for ambassadors. Again, the child's allegiance status, even on their view, turns on the status of the parent.
What do we do with Professor Mueller's amicus brief and the historical record, and the fact that even at times in this country where we understood that the parents were declared enemies of the United States, I'm talking about World War II and Japanese internment, babies born in that circumstance were given birthright citizenship. So it seems as though this concept of allegiance of the parents really wasn't.
And this is why people call you dumb, Ketanji. I'm going to run this back 1 minute, and then we're going to explain why she's dumb. Her stupidity requires explanation. She's way too high up in government to be this dumb about this very thing. Like, this is the thing you're supposed to be smart at. You could be dumb about other things, but not this one thing.
That even at times in this country where we understood that the parents were declared enemies of the United States, I'm talking about World War II and Japanese internment, babies born in that circumstance were given birthright citizenship.
Those Japanese people had been citizens of this country for a long time already. Their citizenship was never in question. So as their Japanese parents were interned in this country, their citizenship wasn't stripped. They were just interned. They were imprisoned. And then they had children in prison. That's like if you get locked up and make a baby on a conjugal, or a woman who was in prison and she gets pregnant in jail, the baby is a citizen. The Japanese were still Americans when that happened. Their citizenship was never in question, so the citizenship of their children was never a question either. But you're bringing that up basically because they're Japanese. You're trying to make it a racial issue when it's not exactly a racial issue to begin with.
So it seems as though this concept of allegiance of the parents really wasn't driving birthright citizenship, at least at this period of our history. So are you saying this is wrong, or they shouldn't have gotten birthright citizenship?
Well, if they were domiciled here, yes, they should have. If they were temporarily present, then no. But the executive practice, we can see.
How does
And yet domiciled, meaning their citizenship was already here. Their residency in America was already legally approved and established by America. The government had already cleared them.
in the 1930s?
how does the temporary presence run with your concept of allegiance? I'm not sure I understand. So can you be clear? Are you saying that only people who are domiciled here, as you define it, can form the necessary loyalty to the United States?
Meaning, if you're an established citizen already, then your children can have, quote, birthright citizenship. If you're not an established citizen already, your children have no birthright because you are not a citizen to pass them that right along with their birth. It's actually very legally concise, but you know, black girl magic.
Allegiance is not a question of subjective loyalty.
Okay.
Oh, it is something you owe. It's a reciprocal relationship between the citizen, whether they want it or not, they have that allegiance. And I think it's powerfully
On the basis of what?
domicile. I mean, that's what it says in so many words in the Venus and the Pizarro. It says, look, if you're talking about an alien, if they're just temporarily passing through, no, they don't have allegiance. But if they've made it their permanent home, they become part of our political community, and they are analogous or akin to citizens.
All right, just quickly, because I'm mindful of the time. What do you do with Won Kim Ark's statement that birthright citizenship is applying, quote, independently of a residence with intention to continue such residence, independently of any domiciliation? I know that they use domicile, it's a fact in the case, but that's not a part of their holding. It's not what the reasoning turns on.
I believe you're quoted from page 693 of that opinion. It goes on to say, not citizen terms on that, but the duty of obedience to our laws. It doesn't take the further step at that point and say, therefore, if you have temporary local allegiance, you're a citizen. And immediately before that, you have that page 693 summary of the court's holding, where it says
you say
domicile.
Won Kim Ark incorporates a domicile requirement.
That is the holding. It's definitely clearly expressed in the holding.
All right, one final thing, perspective. You say perspective, we're supposed to do this. Don't worry about the people who are already here and who would not qualify under your rule. How does this work? Are you suggesting that when a baby is born, people have to have documents, present documents? Is this happening in the delivery room? How are we determining when or whether a newborn child is a citizen of the United States under your rule?
And I think that's directly addressed in the SSA guidance that's cited in our brief. What SSA says is there's currently a system where, for example, social security numbers are generated based on the birth certificate. They say this can still be, for the vast majority of instances, completely transparent. You will still get a...
No, not transparent. I'm just talking about the particulars, because now you...
How about if you're already a legal established citizen, then you can have birthright citizenship for your children. If not, then not.
Say your rule turns on whether the person intended to stay in the United States. And I think Justice Barrett brought this up. So we bringing pregnant women in for depositions. What are we doing to figure this out?
No, as I pointed out earlier, the executive order turns on lawfulness of status. So if you
if the mother or the father is an American citizen, then you're good. It's not that complicated.
If you give birth to a baby in the hospital right now, it gets the birth certificate in the system. There's a computer system.
So there's no opportunity. There's apparently no opportunity then for the person to prove or to say that they actually intended to stay in the United States.
Absolutely not. The opposite is true. Their opportunity to dispute if they think they were wrongly denied, which would only happen in a tiny minority of cases,
after the
is
fact.
Directly addressed in that guidance.
After the fact.
Yes.
After their baby has been denied citizenship, then we can go through the process.
Yes. And the way that, I mean, I'm summarizing because I'm not an expert on computers, but there's a computer program that currently automatically generates a social security number. SSA says, look, a social security number, non-citizens can have them if they have work authorization, so it doesn't prove citizenship. We'll give you a social security number, provided that there's the system automatically checks the immigration status of the parents, which there are robust databases for, and then it appears no different to the vast majority of birthing parents.
Thank you.
Thank you, counsel.
Now let's take a look at these Chinese billionaire baby farms.
A story emerging from the United States has captured global attention and raised profound questions about wealth, ethics, and family. Chinese gaming billionaire Zhu Bo, founder of online gaming company Duoi,
Not a gaming billionaire. Oh my God. Can you imagine an army of genetically modified Chinese gamers with American passports? No. No, we're not ready. The world is not ready. This is how you get cyberpunk.
has reportedly fathered more than 100 children through surrogacy agencies across America. However, his former partner alleges the actual figure exceeds 300 children. According to a comprehensive investigation by the Wall Street Journal, which verified numerous social media posts and reports, Zhu Bo has embarked on an unprecedented mission to create what he describes as a sprawling family dynasty.
This nigga is skeeting an army into America. This is an invasion. This is a goddamn invasion. This nigga is skeeting an army right into America, right under our borders. You didn't even notice it. When they all turn 18, they're all going to be given Chinese assault weapons, and they're going to be given missions, and then it's going to be lit. This nigga skeeted an army here. How you do that?
He has publicly referred to himself as China's first father. In 2023, Zhu made a striking declaration of his intentions to father at least 50 sons, especially male heirs, whom he believes are better suited to inherit and manage his business empire.
Why do you keep showing images of white and brown and black kids? I know he did not have a Punjabi kid. I know this Han Chinese nigga did not make a Punjabi baby. Why don't you show me little Asian babies? What's up with that? I hate when the media tells you one thing and shows you another. Stop messing with my expectations, all right?
Social media accounts linked to the billionaire have posted statements claiming that having more children can solve all problems, and have even speculated about potential marriages between his offspring and the children of other prominent figures, including Elon Musk.
And this is how you take over. This is how you take over an entire political system. My babies are going to marry your babies, and then my babies are going to secretly strangle your babies in their sleep after you have a couple of kids. And then my family runs everything. That's how things have done. This is how dynasties have been created throughout history, all right? This is high-level political intrigue right here. This is espionage the old-fashioned way. I'm just going to make my own spies. Skeet, 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 skeet.
However, this ambitious vision has encountered significant legal and personal challenges. In 2023, Los Angeles Family Court Judge Amy Pellman denied Zhu's parentage petition, though accounts associated with him later suggested a successful appeal. The situation has become further complicated by a custody dispute with his ex-girlfriend Tang Jing over 2 daughters.
Even Chinese gamer billionaires have hoe problems. You got 99 problems. I feel bad for you, son. Well, what do they know? If you're having girl problems, I feel bad for you, son.
Tang has alleged that the financial burden of maintaining this extraordinary family has been substantial. She claims the children lack proper household registration and suggests the count of 300 may actually be conservative.
What if he has like, there might be more than 300? What if he has 300 unregistered Chinese babies with American passports? Like, what could you do with 300 Chinese babies with American passports and nobody knows where they are, what their real names are? They're just floating around in the system. I feel like this is a movie for Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible. We got to get the Mission Impossible team to track down each and every one of his children and put them on an island. This is like the plot of a James Bond movie. You know, the children of Spectre. They must be stopped. Bond, you must collect all 13 children and imprison them on this island before it's too late. We got to find this nigga and his children. This nigga is a national threat.
In response to mounting controversy, the OI network released a statement disputing the higher figure, clarifying that Zhu has fathered only a little over 100 children through many years of effort in the United States. Reports indicate
Said many years of effort.
Disputing the higher figure, clarifying that Zhu has fathered only a little over 100 children through many years of effort in the United States.
How hard was it really, though? But that was total rim shot. But no, like, many years of effort. Like, were you really out here struggling? You know, please have my baby. Like, how hard was it really? I imagine a lot of money was involved. I imagine lots and lots of money was involved. But what do I know about Chinese billionaire gamer bros?
Reports indicate that many of these children reside in a single home in Irvine, California, under the care of professional nannies. The case has sparked intense debate, particularly in China, where commercial surrogacy is prohibited by law. With Shijita Sen Mojumdar, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
And this is why we're having the birthright citizenship problem, because Trump knows that these Chinese spy kids, basically, like literally Chinese spy kids, at some point we're gonna have to deal with this. How do you fight the Chinese spy kids? They eat our food. They have Midwestern accents. They shop at the Gap. How are you gonna catch these kids?
In China alone, we have identified more than 1,000 birth tourism companies that are almost exclusively focused on the United States. Our federal government does not track this information because there's no centralized collection of information on the nationality of parents who are giving birth. China, however, has done estimates themselves, and the numbers are eye-popping. The Chinese government gave an estimate a few years ago. Their estimate was that on average, 50,000 Chinese citizens a year were giving birth in the United States or at U.S. territories like Saipan. There are others like Professor Salvatore Barbonis from Australia who believes that number is higher. He's estimated 100,000. There was a research firm in China that estimated in 2018 alone, 180,000 managed to give birth in the United States. No one knows what the actual number is, and that is the challenge that we face today. If you do the math, if you look at the ramping up of this activity over the last 13 years, and you take the ballpark estimates, you are looking at roughly 1 million, quote unquote, U.S. citizens who are being raised in the People's Republic of China today. If you look at the websites of these birth tourism companies,
they have birth tourism. Come to America, eat the pizza, buy a hoagie, drop a baby, get papers, go back home, all for the price of 5 chicken wings and an egg roll. They have birth tourism in China. That's crazy work.
They will tell you who is hiring them. These are not political dissidents. These are military officers, people from the Ministry of Propaganda, people that are high-ranking officials in the Chinese Communist Party. In other words, these are part of the CCP establishment.
Listen, the best, wow, that's a crazy graphic. The best spies are the ones that you make on your own. Who are you going to trust? Somebody that you blackmailed into working for you? Or a kid that you skeeted out of your own balls, right? The best spies are the ones that you make on your own. China understands this. This is an old strategy.
I was thinking about this, and I think there are various sources that say this, that you obviously have permanent allegiance based on being born in whatever country you're from. That's what everybody recognizes. But you also have local allegiance when you are on the soil of this other sovereign. And I was thinking, you know, I, a U.S. citizen, am visiting Japan. And what it means is that, you know, if I steal someone's wallet in Japan, the Japanese authorities can arrest me and prosecute me. It's allegiance, meaning can they control you as a matter of law? I can also rely on them if my wallet is stolen to, you know, under Japanese law, go and prosecute the person who has stolen it. So there's this relationship based on, even though I'm a temporary traveler, I'm just on vacation in Japan, I'm still locally owing allegiance in that sense.
And this is why we all call Ketanji retarded. Because she is arguing, by extension, if I steal a wallet in Japan, I am Japanese. Konnichiwa. Anyway, we'll see how the Supreme Court rules on this whole thing. I'm going to wrap it up right here. I appreciate you guys coming out. We're going to end it really short tonight. Like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all for watching. We are done.
Aspiring to be patriarchs like what white men have, that isn't freedom. That isn't going to help anybody. It's certainly not going to help Black people.
It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done.